You're listening to the Fezcast, the Saracens fans podcast bringing you the independent and unhinged views of the voices in our heads, as well as those of our special guests. To get in touch with us, find the Fezcast on social media and listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube and more. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy this week's show.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Well, welcome to episode something or other of the Fezcast. It's got to that point of the season where we really haven't got a clue. We're just chucking them out and hoping you'll enjoy them. But we've got a double header to talk about. Two matches against Trailfinders, and one went significantly better than the other. So we're going to do as we normally do, and we're going to annoy all of you by being positive about the good stuff first. I've got Duncan with me and Alex as well, who Alex was at the women's match against Trailfinders women, so that is going to be good. First, Duncan, how are you doing? Are you all prepared to go off on your next jet set?
I've got the jets revved up, both of them flying side by side, going to the other side of the world, which I'm very much looking forward to. And it will give me the chance to avoid going to see the game against London Scottish, which is a good thing, I think.
I think so. We should say that Duncan's not just going on holiday; he is actually jetting off to do some noble things this time, rather than just enhance his carbon footprint. But Alex, how are you doing? You must be quite busy. What, you're coming up to half term at the moment, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm good. I've just had exams at school, so it's relatively relaxed this weekend because I've had no homework. But yeah, it's been good.
Fair play, and you managed to enjoy yourself by going to a rugby match as well, and one which the women were victorious in, which is fantastic. Now, obviously, Duncan and I haven't seen anything beyond maybe a 30-second highlight here and there, so we're entirely reliant on you to tell us how the game went. On paper, though, I was watching the scores as they came in at the men's game because I was less interested in watching the men's game than I was staring at my phone at text updates for that match. But it looked a little bit tense for a while, but ultimately we came out victorious.
Yeah, I definitely was slightly nervous at the start when they scored first and then scored after we got our second try because they beat the Bristol the weekend before, and I was thinking we don't want that to happen to us. But after that, we managed to take control of the game really well, and they only scored once the rest of the game. So we definitely kicked on after the first 20 minutes or so, and we kind of got our defence up and stopped them scoring.
Excellent. Well, I mean, you and I are probably the culprits for making the teams further down the table start to take points off of teams, because I think back in January we both commented on the fact that no one in that bottom half of the table had beaten anyone in the top half. And then we went and lost to Loughborough. Loughborough then beat Bristol again. I think Sale beat Exeter. They've all started taking points off of each other. So it's entirely our fault. So it's nice to see that we didn't come a cropper with that one. And Ealing have got some very, very talented players, haven't they?
Yeah, as I definitely think they had a couple of injuries. Emma Taylor's a massive one for them.
Yeah.
But they definitely played very cohesively as a team. I think just the leadership we had on the pitch and the ability to bring a strong bench on as well really helped us, especially in the second half, get a good win.
Excellent. Glad to hear it. Now, we have on this show, even with when May Campbell has been on the show herself, we've royally taken the mick out of her because most of her tries are scored from about a metre out. And she did pick up a hat-trick against Ealing. So was it a combined total of 3 metres, or was there actually a bit more work for her to do?
I think there was. At Ealing, they didn't announce the Saracens players who scored. So it wasn't until after the match I realised she'd scored a hat-trick. I think I knew she scored one of the tries, but the other two were definitely from close range. So
that is the classic 4'11" May Campbell burrowing over the line. But someone's got to do it, and she is very, very good at doing it. Well, obviously, she was a standout on the day, but any other players that stood out for you?
I think Beth Blacklock coming off the bench did really well. We were having some trouble with some of our kicks just going straight up in the air and coming back down. But she used her kicking really well and just controlled the game a lot better than I think we had been doing before.
So it's good to see that players like Beth Blacklock are coming off the bench and are making an impact, especially where the likes of Zoe Harrison are out, Duncan.
Oh, definitely. And Amelia McDougall, did she have another good game?
Yeah, I don't think she was as influential as maybe against Harlequins, but I think she still had a good game. Still kind of passed, gave a couple of good balls to players, and kind of generally helping us do the right thing and get on the score sheet.
So, well, yeah, the overall team performance. What sort of stood out from us? Because we could have been in a bit of trouble, couldn't we?
Yeah, I think our reactions were really quick. So both at the ruck and also Trailfinders overthrew a couple of their lineouts. Whoever was at the back of ours was like Bryony Field was really quick to pick up the ball and to try and make something of it. So I think just reaction time was really good.
Last week, you said you made a very good point when you said to me, I asked the question, why are we looking so much more cohesive than earlier on in the season? And you said quite rightly that was just after that international window and they've been together much longer. Are they continuing to sort of improve that cohesiveness?
Yeah, I think so. We're large as it's unchanged 15 this time, and I think that really helped because you've played together the week before, and then you come in and you play again. You don't need to work anything out really, and you can kind of just come in and do roughly the same thing again week on week.
And that now is definitely the time to keep that momentum going, isn't it? And fingers crossed that they do.
Yeah, and I think going into the bye week would be an opportunity to kind of try some stuff out, try new moves, and then we can hopefully really attack Exeter and hopefully win that game as well.
We can't see if you've got a big page of notes in front of you, Alex, but I'm getting the impression that you're a lot more prepared for this than me and Duncan usually are.
Yeah, I have a study period last thing on a Monday, so normally I can make some notes then.
Well, it's nice to know that you're using your study periods at school to do the things that are most important, like prepare to come on the Fezcast with us.
Well, we were talking earlier about the fact, there's so many permutations left, isn't it? But my gut feel is that it's all going to come down to the Gloucester Quins game at the end. I feel, famous last words, and maybe we regret it, that we're going to carry on doing what we need to do. But it perhaps because Quins didn't quite lose, it's going to come down to that game a little bit out of our hands.
Yeah, I think also Bristol have got to play Exeter and Harlequins. So if they can beat Harlequins as well, that would be really good for us. But we only need 2 points out of the next two games to qualify for the semi-finals. So it's now about trying to get that home semi-final to make sure the best place possible to go in and win.
Yeah, and the victory over Leicester scoring 100 points could actually be quite big for us because it's given us quite a big buffer at the moment over most other teams, in particular over Exeter, but Bristol who are in fifth. I mean, it's worth looking at the table in a bit of detail just to see where we are. Bristol in fifth. They've obviously got to play a couple of games, but they're 86. The difference is 86. Their points difference between us. So even if we picked up 1 point and didn't lose particularly heavily in the two games, still safe for the top four. But we're obviously chasing a bit more than that. Gloucester Hartpury top on 58 points. Harlequins next up on 55. Then us on 53. Exeter are behind us on 46, but with a game in hand, which is that game against Bristol. Who could find themselves out of it entirely if they lose to Exeter. So we could be playing Exeter in a couple of weeks' time, with them a couple of points behind us. So pretty major match coming up for us, right?
Yeah, and I think that will kind of be the one that kind of decides where we finish at the end of the season, along with the other matches that we have no control in. Because after that, we've got a Sale, and we should beat them.
We hope so.
Do, yeah,
we should
do.
Well, I'm sure that's what Exeter were saying as well when they had their slightly aborted match. That there was a huge storm that stopped the game for a good hour or so, and then they had to come back out and play the last 10 minutes with Sale ahead, and they hung on. So pretty big for us that. But if we go into the final weekend having taken maximum points, beaten Exeter, could potentially be ahead of Harlequins by that point. We don't know, but we'd also go into that final weekend with the chance of finishing top of the table, and Gloucester Hartpury are still looking over their shoulders. So a lot to play for.
Well, that's useful in making Gloucester put out a decent team against Quins because, well, it sounds like it's coming down to if we can get those 5 points against Exeter, then there are two chances for Quins to slip up against two very good teams. And we can put pressure on that final game for Gloucester to want to put a good team out, which is excellent.
Absolutely. Well, we're gonna ask for a prediction at this point. Alex, where are we finishing? I think we're pretty much nailed on for the top four, but where within that top four are we going to be?
I think we'll finish second. I don't think we'll finish first. I think Gloucester will take that. But I think all going well, we should finish second.
Duncan, you agree?
Well, I'm going to put cross my fingers because I so want that because I'd really look forward to those two decent games at the StoneX in end of February, March, whenever it is, which would be really something to look forward to.
So I must admit, I entirely agree with you. I don't know that Harlequins are going to win both of their final matches, which then does open the door for us, assuming that we beat Exeter, or it potentially opens the door for them.
One thing about Saturday that I heard a lot of people say is that why didn't they swap the women's fixtures against Ealing around so that we could have had a double header on Saturday? They seem to be actively working against the idea of having a double header. So I think it would have been great.
I think you're potentially right. I know, obviously, we've had from speaking to the Saracens staff, there is generally an approach from them that they would like the women's matches to be standalone fixtures and generate more things that way. There's two very sort of separate fan bases for the term, but I could certainly see actually that it would have worked very well the other way around if it was a double header at Ealing, which I think they have done for other teams before.
Well, I think there's two aspects to that. You're absolutely right. They do say that there are two very distinct fan bases, but I know quite a few men's season ticket holders who went to Trailfinders because they chose that game. So I don't think it's as cut and dried as they say. And secondly, the other opportunity that could have been a double header, they wanted to make the duel a standalone event, and I do understand that they want to build it up as the premier event for the women of the season, and it would have interfered with that a little bit. But I think for the Trailfinders game, would have been nothing but good news.
You'd have enjoyed a double match day out, Alex, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I would have.
Mind you might not, if the men went last, you might not have enjoyed that, but we come on to that.
Yeah, I certainly think you picked the better of the two matches to go to be honest.
Yeah.
Well, that is the women's match. I think we've covered the good news really. We'll come back in a second, and we are going to try and find the positives from the men's match against Ealing, but they might be a little bit difficult to come by. But yeah, we'll be back in a second.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
You are listening to the Fezcast, which is proudly sponsored by the Saracen Supporters Association, and I'm Alison Davis, one of the SSA committee. For a £10 annual subscription, the SSA provides our members with monthly newsletters, virtual and in-person player events, away match ticket allocations, and we organise pre-match gatherings at away matches. We sponsor men's and women's players, and we support the Saracens Foundation Track Club on behalf of our members. On top of all that, every year we have a seasonal SSA badge, which is exclusive to members. Where else can you get that much value for a tenner? Join now at membermojo.co.uk/SSA, or come and see us on match day in the Oasis at the StoneX.
This is the Fezcast.
Welcome back to the Fezcast. Duncan and I have taken a deep breath just to get ready for this. Alex just can't face it, to be honest, listening to two of us moan, so she's disappeared, so thank you for that. But, I mean, look, we're in danger of repeating ourselves over the last few weeks. But first, Saracens men against Ealing Trailfinders, conceding 50 points and just about managing to score 4 tries ourselves by the end of the game. It's pretty bleak. But first, we are going to try and pick out a couple of positive bits. I can think of some, not many, and they're not brilliant ones, but I can think of some. I mean, Duncan, what glimmer have you taken out of that game?
Brandon Jackson. And that's about it. I thought he was very, very good.
Yeah.
He was as he has been. He's building up to that point. Threatening on the ball, great solo try. It looks like give him the ball and something will happen. I mean, Tobias Elliott was good, but the same thing was happening to Tobias Elliott. There's been happening when he's playing with everybody else, is that by the time he gets the ball, he does a good job, but he's surrounded by players because that's the way we play.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I'm totally with you with Brandon Jackson. I think he was perhaps in danger over recent years of almost becoming a little bit forgotten when we did see him not necessarily making mistakes, but maybe not looking entirely confident in what he was doing. But yeah, I think that was probably the most assured I've seen him. And yeah, he picked up a hat-trick himself, which kind of went unnoticed a little bit given how things were going. And he was also up against Ben Harris. And I think for the most part looked twice the player that Ben Harris did.
I agree with that. Ben Harris did what Ben Harris has been doing for years, which is on the one or two occasions he got the ball, he was useful. But that's his problem. He doesn't get it that often, and he struggles to get in the game.
Yeah. Whereas, Brandon Jackson was appearing in field. He was taking a lot of high balls as well, and he was putting himself about a bit. So, definitely. His performance is one that we can look at as something that hopefully will stand him in good stead moving forward. I mean, the other one is a bit of a double-edged thing here, but I actually thought Max Eek, for the time he spent on the pitch, was very, very good, as he was against Exeter. I mean, unfortunately, he got sparked out early in the second half, I believe. And
he was out stone cold for a long time, wasn't
quite
he?
a while, yeah.
At one time, I was fearing that he was going off on a stretcher, completely prone, which would have been really bad. Thankfully, he walked off, which was great news. But I can't imagine he'll be back for a few weeks.
No, and that's the problem, because I think we've seen a lot from him, and I think this run of Prem Cup fixtures was going to be fantastic for him, because we probably end up seeing him a little bit more in the league too. But I thought he was putting himself about really well.
On those occasions when Ollie Hartley received the ball at speed, he was a great battering ram.
Mm.
But the problem is, as you said, we don't want to sound like a stuck record. It doesn't happen that often.
No.
It's that everybody's receiving the ball standing still, and there were a lot of parallels with the only Six Nations game I saw was the Wales-France game, and which looked a bit like Saracens for two reasons. A, Nick Tompkins was at centre, and B, Wales were playing in exactly the same way that Saracens do it in attack, that everybody was receiving the ball standing still. And one of the commentators said, oh yeah, they're all receiving it standing still. And the problem with that is you can do all the jinking you like afterwards. The defence has had that extra time to be ready for you. And I just think that's what's happening to Saracens.
Yeah. Now, the difficult thing here is that we have, over the course of the season, on this show and elsewhere, there's been some criticism of Ivan Van Zyl for the slow and inaccurate ball. There has been some criticism of Fergus Burke for being a bit indecisive and static and slow. Louis Johnson against Exeter, it did seem a bit static and unsure, and then again against Ealing, the same thing. And with Gareth Simpson and Charlie Bracken at 9, both doing similar, kicking the ball away as well when we didn't necessarily want it to be. Is it really going to be the case that we've got 3 scrum halves and 2 fly halves that are naturally playing as they are, or is it actually something that's been coached? And if it's the latter, then that's a huge problem, surely.
It is. And one of the indicators that points towards that is a lot of play is made of the very good idea that we have the young players playing at Ampthill. They get Saracens coaches up there to coach them in the way that the first team is playing. And boy, that's working, because they're coming in and playing as big a crap system as the first team is. It's clearly I believe it's something in the coaching because they're not bad players. I mean, our first team, they're not bad. They're a long way from being bad players. Our youngsters are good players, and you saw that, in the occasional glimpses of very good stuff against Ealing. But they're both playing, whether it's the young players, whether it's the first team, they're all playing that system, and it's not working.
No, it's worth saying as well that although they've been coached by Mark McCall and the whole team for the whole season, it was Rob Webber and James Tyrrell, I think, that take the reins for the Prem Cup. But they're obviously they're not going to play in an entirely different style in the Cup to what the main first team are doing in the league. So yeah, it's tricky to know what's. I'm not going to sit here and say Mark McCall and that coaching team that we've had for over a decade need to go and we need something new. But I do believe that they've got a bit stuck and something does need to change. Now is a good time to do that. But yeah, we need to see something fundamentally different in how we were playing. And I actually thought we started to see that last season. But yeah, we do seem to be reverting to type at the moment, which just isn't working, is it?
We really are sounding like Arsenal TV, calling for a shake-up of the coaches, aren't we? But I do agree with you. There does seem it's been going on too long now, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I thought it was very telling that there was no quote from any of the coaching team after the match, was there? No, and it wasn't the same as we heard after the. Was it the Exeter game with Mark McCall basically saying, "Oh, we haven't bothered with the previous performances, and it doesn't matter because we'll be there or thereabouts when it starts again." Well, you got to hope that they must know something's not working, and you got to hope that they're working on it, or the end of the season won't be very pretty.
No, not at all. I mean, at the end of the day, it is the Prem Cup, and like it or no, that it is an opportunity for I was going to say the younger coaches, but the less experienced coaches to develop themselves as well. So I think hanging them out to dry in the press was never going to happen. Whereas Mark McCall is in a position where he has to front up and face that. And the same as I was going to say, yeah, the younger players, but actually we had a relatively experienced team out there. You're not going to hang them out to dry in the cup either. And let's be fair to Ealing, they have put together, regardless of what you think of how they've done it, they have put together a team that has shown over the last few years that they can mix it with a lot of established clubs in the top flight. So they're no mugs. We knew they were no mugs. They've actually beaten us on every occasion that they've played against us, barring a promotion playoff a few years back.
It took me right back to those dark days of watching on my computer them stuff us, pre-season, pre the championship season. It looked like that, didn't it?
It did, yeah. And that game against Cornish Pirates as well, where we put out a relatively experienced team. I mean, on another day, we might have beaten them. There were early moments where we switched off, very quickly conceded a couple of tries, and it was always on the back foot from there. On another day, a tackle may have been made, or a loose ball might not have squirted out of a ruck, and we might not have been in that situation. But like you say, the issue that we had, in a way, was that we just didn't really have the attack to break them down quickly enough.
That's the constant this season, isn't it? I mean, I did wonder. You have to wonder. I mean, again, the young players, the likes of Nathan Mikaloff and everybody, were quite clearly putting in the effort. I don't know whether everybody was. Do you? Did it look like it to you?
I think the effort was there. I do think the effort was there. I just think the application wasn't. You mentioned Ollie Hartley earlier. I think, again, I don't know whether this is Ollie Hartley himself or whether it's a coached thing, but I think, well, I didn't realise Sam Spink was playing, really. The amount of times he actually touched the ball could have been zero for all I know. I think Ollie Hartley sometimes is too keen to take the ball into contact and run in a straight line, because he is more than capable of flattening people sometimes. But actually, have we seen the side of his game where he can play in an attacking back line? He is the closest thing to Brad Barrett we've had since Brad Barrett, but that actually, in the way that we might need to play in future, might be working against him. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, again, the question as you raised it is he getting the opportunities? There were two occasions where he took the ball at speed and he was a wrecking ball. He made 10, 15 yards, no problem. And if we'd been fast, following up and not dropping the ball afterwards, things could have happened. So I would persevere with him, but do accept what you say. He's not the finished article. He's got a lot to learn, but he's still young.
To be honest, we're going to say this about everyone here. That none of them are the finished article. It's the reason that mostly they're playing in the cup. It's just a bit of a concern when you look at our first team and people are calling for certain players to be dropped. I don't know necessarily that what's going to come in is going to be any better and any different, because, like I've said, it may be a coaching thing. I mean, Louis Johnson is someone that I'm not going to pick on. I don't think he had a fantastic game against Ealing by any stretch, but he has also had a very stop-start time at Saracens. He's played the pre-season, picked up a long-term injury, hasn't really had an opportunity to train with the team too much, and has kind of been thrust into the last few weeks. So he'll be learning systems, if there are still decent systems. And I think he will grow into his Saracens time as well. But
I hope so. Apparently, he was very good pre-season against Bedford when he came on.
Yes,
and it will be. No, you're right. Based on Saturday's performance, you would be a long way away from saying he was a shoe-in to even be on the bench. But I hope he does force his way through to get to that position, and we get to a sort of Charlie Hodgson, young Owen Farrell type situation, but with him and Fergus Burke, because I think it'll help them both to be playing the game with fresh legs when they do.
Yeah. So I don't really know how to explain this properly, but I think what I would say, the result against Ealing wasn't great. But actually, there's not many people I would single out as individually having a bad performance. There were individual mistakes. There were a couple of players, I think, that were missing tackles that they really should have made. But you look at, ignore some of the senior players that were out there, the younger players that we had, and the ones that we brought off the bench as well. There weren't any of them that I looked at and went, you haven't really got what it takes to eventually play for Saracens, where we've seen us put out young teams in the cup, even in the last year or 2, 3 years, and players that have come and gone and left the club. I think sometimes you do look at the sides that we put out in the cup and go, some of you're not going to be a top level rugby player. You're a decent rugby player, but you just can't see them developing. Whereas this group, I genuinely do think that about the overwhelming majority of them. I don't know whether you feel the same.
I agree. They all look like they're going to be. They already either are or are going to be first team players. And we've got the 3 who were playing for the England under-20s as well, who are also 3 excellent players. And apparently, and our under-18s are going very, very well as well. So, Maro Toji said it. Mark McCall saying, in a way, we're waiting for that next generation to come through. It's just very hard in the meantime at times to have some patience. And we're so used to celebrating, aren't we? I didn't sign up for this. Did you sign up for this?
Well, yes. I've been going since about 1999 when I was 6. So I'm used to us not being very good.
We've forgotten what it's like to be crap.
I have, I've certainly spent my adult life watching a good Saracens team. But look, I think we're going to say it over and over again. We don't mind if we lose. We just want to see the effort, see us being exciting, and see us trying to play.
I think you're right. I think you're right. We're seeing the effort. It's there's just something wrong, and I don't know enough. I don't pretend to know anything about rugby. I just come on here and try and pull the wool over everybody's eyes, and I can't tell you what it is, but something's wrong.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the unfortunate thing is certainly for the 2 of us, there are 2 Prem Cup games left, which are really for us, they're dead games in terms of qualification, but they are going to be important for the development of the team going forward. Now, neither of us are going to be at London Scottish next Friday, and I can't imagine I'm going to be able to get to the Stoop to see the Quins game, which means our coverage of these two fixtures is going to be pretty rubbish, really.
But, we're going to have to ask for some help.
We are going to need
There will be people there who'd be willing to come on.
Absolutely, but with those two fixtures, of what's the bigger picture? Do you want to see these younger players developing still? Do you want us to put out a more senior side to be trying new things for the league ahead? Or what do you?
No, I definitely want to see the young players. That's what the Prem Cup's for. I want to see them playing together, and especially the Quins game where they'll be up against, like at home when we had a pretty decent performance, they'll be up against an Ealing level team at the very least. London Scottish. Well, I don't know whether James Hadfield's going to score 6 again, but it shouldn't be a problem. But a good chance for them to run out, get a bit of confidence, play with some of the more senior players. Because basically the team we put out on Saturday, I think, was everybody left standing, wasn't it? That's why the likes of Hugh Tizard and everybody was playing, who wouldn't normally. So it'll give them an opportunity to do that. I'd like to see Josh Hallett given a chance at centre. He's always impressed whenever he played. He was man of the match against Leinster. And as you say, you couldn't say that at the moment, the Ollie Hartley, Sam Spink or anybody is outstanding. So, I'd like to see him given a chance.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I'd certainly back us to maybe make a few tweaks and changes and things. Hugh Tizard probably does now need to put his feet up, and we let someone else have a go. The front row will probably get shuffled around as well, but yeah, we'll just have to see what happens. Little touch on the rest of the Six Nations. You mentioned Wales, but obviously England played as well. You can listen to other podcasts for a proper review of that, but the likes of Mara Itoje and Ben Earl and Theo Dan were out there in a defeat to Ireland. New captain Mara Itoje, I've actually been critical of him as captain, but I think it seemed to me like he was saying all the right things and putting in relatively a captain's performance.
Yeah, I got home in such a foul mood that I didn't watch the England game, but listening to those other podcasts that you talk about, people were generally complimentary about Maro. A lot of them were wondering whether our fitness, the England fitness, was good enough to last the whole game, and in particular play that very rush defence and whether we were physical enough. And at the same time, the other questions were Ireland were quite clearly thinking on their feet and working us out, whereas we perhaps are still playing Plan A and not any good at working out Plan B for ourselves.
I think you're certainly right that the energy levels seem to drop, and there was a bit of impetus off the bench, but not enough really. And I suppose the problem is with that England team. I mean, yes, the England setup does have more access to the players than it might do, but if it's the fitness that's a concern, you've not really got very long as a set of coaches to work on your international players' fitness. That does really have to happen at the clubs, doesn't it?
Yeah, they'll have to work with the clubs if the clubs agree. I mean, Eddie Jones used to say this, and I remember going to one of the SSA AGMs, and our coaches were absolutely apoplectic that he should say that our players aren't fit enough to play international football. But I guess anybody's going to say it if England keep on dropping off at the end, which they often do.
Yep. And of course, we had Ben Earl inside a curry sandwich playing at the weekend, or Twin Delou, as I think they call them at Sale. And Ben Earl in his unnatural position of number 8 again actually seemed to perform pretty well in Ben Earl's style. But it'd be nice to see Tom Willis get a run in that position as well, though, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think that's going to come, isn't it? I just wanted to highlight something I was telling you about, because I watched the France-Wales game, and Anton Dupont was back. And when you consider that last year, France, the only reason why France didn't lose to Italy was because Italy had a penalty to win the game and the ball fell off the tee with 5 seconds to go. Whereas this year, it's amazing what a difference one man does. And in particular, he had one play which was straight out of NFL, a very original play. He took the ball, went backwards in the way that NFL quarterbacks do, so backwards and diagonal behind a phalanx of French players who were holding off the onrushing Welsh players, at which point Dupont kicked the ball diagonally to the corner to be caught by the equivalent of a rushing back, his wing. So a really, really clever play that they've quite clearly got from watching American football. So, yeah, that'll be easy for England, won't it?
They will, yeah. When you've got a player like Dupont, you can say, well, do you want to try this today, mate, in an international fixture for the first time? Yeah, go ahead. Why not? Let's give it a crack. I mean, if you were Saracens and you know, we had the money in the bank to give whatever wage you wanted to a marquee player, as everyone seems to think that we do. I think that Anton Dupont, give him what he wants. Do you know what? He can have my house, my car, my clothes, my wife, everything. It's I don't think he wants any of them, but
no. The debate is most people seem to be saying quite clearly the best player in the world at the moment. Is he potentially the best player of all time? And you look at what he done, going to sevens, winning a gold medal, coming back, doing what he does. Extraordinary player.
Yeah, I never go in for the best player of all time topic of conversation.
It's impossible to say, isn't it?
Yeah, especially in rugby when it's been professional for that tiny amount of time, really. But I would happily turn around and say, yeah, best player of his generation for sure.
Yeah. But
yeah, we can all dream, we can all wish we had Anton Dupont rolling out at Richmond next Friday night for us against London Scottish. But
I'm sure he'd really enjoy it.
I'm sure the guys down there would love it.
Can you imagine what he'd do?
I think he'd come out onto the pitch for the second half smoking a big cigar, probably. That's no disrespect to any of the players at London Scottish, but I'm sure they'd welcome the opportunity to be playing against him.
I'm sure they would agree that they'd be up against it.
You'd want to be that bloke in the second row going, I stuck one on Dupont. That's going to be it. Anyway, look, we've started talking rubbish now, as you know, even more rubbish than we normally do, and that's probably time for us to.
I think we've eaten the rubbish out quite well, personally. We've spread it over quite a long time.
Yeah, we've got time to kill, haven't we? Next week we will try and have a bit of a chat about the London Scottish game. If anyone's actually going to that one, if you could give us a shout and want to come on the show, that would be absolutely fantastic. But I'll also be having a chat next week with the outgoing Saracens women's media guru, Harry Scotland-Bow, and it is a very nice chat, so we'll plonk that into next week's show as well. But until then, Duncan, enjoy your jet setting and a bit of getting yourself tanned out doing some hard graft.
No, I probably won't be. I'm teaching kids in Guatemala English, so they'll end up speaking gibberish as well.
We'll bring them on the show, why not? No, it's a fantastic thing you're doing down there, Duncan. We'll hopefully it all goes well. We'll look forward to seeing you back in a few weeks' time, and you can teach us some
English.
Spanish.
Teach English. You can do it with a few lessons.
How have we got a dig at Jez into this show?
It's obligatory when he's not here.
On that note, goodbye, everyone. We'll see you soon.
This is the Fezcast.